Good evening, everybody across the world. It's so nice. I was getting some emails from a lot of you from the UK and Canada, and I had no idea the far reach of this show. How many of you out there are listening? So welcome to the show. Appreciate you tuning in. This is The Truth Tonight. I am your host this evening, Roxy Lopez. We have a real exciting guest that you all just adore, and I do too, and I'm so glad to have him back as well, that he can take the time in his busy schedule. Today is the last show of July 2013, July 30th, so no more shows for this month. We do have some cool stuff coming up for August, as I told you about. Some of the guests that I've really been wanting to get on the show, like Norio Hayakawa, will be on. Of course, we're having astrologer Lynn Wallach back next month, and whistleblower Donald Marshall will be with us on the 9th. He has a lot to talk about. We've got Stephen Bissett coming on the show on the 13th to report citizens' hearings and, of course, UFO disclosure and how that's all going with the Paradigm Research Group. And then we're going to talk about fracking. And we've got 4 experts coming on the show on the 16th to really, again, whistleblowers, to whistleblow the whole fracking industry. And I think that's going to be very interesting. And then, of course, Paul Mack and Max Bliss, those of you who are following the whole chemtrail movement. Paul Mack is from Australia. Max Bliss is living up in France. And they are real big in the front of the movement. And they're making some headway in the parliament. And they're going to give us all the updates on what they have been doing that has been positive and has generated not only major awareness, but for the public, but for the government. So this will be a very fascinating show on the 20th. And, of course, we've got a pilot coming on the 30th by the name of Stephen Knussel. And, of course, aviation expert Mark McCandlish. And we're going to have the chemtrail debate on that show on the 30th. And that's going to be very interesting because the pilot, and we've already done the homework on it, he truly has been a pilot for quite some time, Stephen Knussel, and he does not believe what we think is going on. And he's also running for government. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation. So go ahead and look on the schedule page at thetruththenight.com if you want to check in and see all of the shows coming up in August. There's many more than that, but the month of August is going to be very revealing. And I also find it interesting that all of these people are coming forward in August to talk and whistleblow, being that August, according to Brad Olson and many others, is the timeline event where 2 timelines are going to merge in August. And maybe our guest this evening, James Gilliland, may be able to speak on that as well. James, I'm just going to bring you on the show. You're very well known to my audience, so I don't think there is any introduction necessary other than James Gilliland from Eceti Ranch. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
James, fill me in. I'm curious because the last time you were on the show, we had some footage that you had recently done, which was just astounding. I mean, that video has gone viral for you, and it's on our website as well. It was fascinating. I loved that you got such great footage of these quote unquote power-ups. So fascinating. And then following that, you had the seminar, the conference. Can you tell us how the conference went? Tell us about some of the people that I know. Laura Eisenhower was there, and I wish that I could have come, and thanks for the invite. I was not able to make it, but there's always time in the future. How was the seminar, and what did you learn? Was there any exciting stuff that happened during that few days?
We had quite a lineup here, and I wish I had the schedule with me because my left brain's gone out to lunch. But yeah, we had Laura Eisenhower, myself. We had Spencer Barkley, and he was talking about sovereignty and working, along those lines. And we had to do a lot of things here at the ranch. We had to patent the land, and we joined Divine Province, which is a really wonderful organization that has actually taken back our rights. Now we're divine people all the way to the Pope and to the Queen. And he's gotten the seal of Peter. So that's pretty interesting. You can go to divineprovince.org and check out more of that. So we've actually become an embassy here right now. And so we invite people through private invitation. We had to go totally private just to get the powers that be off our back and to continue doing the work that we're doing. But yeah, we had a pretty good lineup, and I don't know, I'm just like brain farting right now for some reason.
No, don't worry about it. Listen, I while we're on the subject, James, tell us a little bit about when did you patent the land? And I think a lot of people are very interested in that. So could you tell us, you don't have to go down the step by step how it happened, but once you patent the land, then you have more rights. Is that correct?
Yeah, Nate and Spencer did amazing work on that, and he's been helping us out quite a bit here. And we did it quite a while ago. It's about almost a year ago. And what it does is you go back to your original land grant and you accept the deed. And when you do that, you're in first, priority, and then all the other contracts after that really don't apply. So, because you're first in priority, and you just choose not to engage, not to contract with them anymore. And we did a lot of other things too, as well as kind of rescind any contracts, any and all contracts. We don't even have an address right now, so it's quite interesting. But we've rescinded all contracts, and we've taken back our divine heritage, our divine name, and got out of the all caps, contract program that the Corporation of the United States, and so we're operating more under a true republic versus the old program, which is the United States was hijacked a long time ago, and that's a show in itself. So I don't want to get into that, but
it totally is. But I just have to ask, James, are you exempt from property taxes now?
We are. We haven't pressed that end of it yet, but we are, and legally everybody is, but you just have to know how to enforce it. But it's quite a trick. But it's not easy. It's not an easy road. I had to go to court 10 times over all this mess, and I got handcuffed and for offending a judge, and got right back out again really fast. But we dismissed 3 or 4 judges and a couple of prosecuting attorneys, and the whole case was finally dismissed. And then they tried one more time, and it's just been a nightmare doing this. But it's what's sad is that the only reason we did it is because we were totally being trespassed upon, and willfully doing everything they could to shut us down and shut our doors. And we had no choice because they wouldn't cooperate in any way whatsoever. Because we tried to go the normal route, and we paid all of our permits. We did walk through all the steps and everything, and they continued to refuse to give us any permits or any. And wouldn't allow us to do anything here on the ranch. And so finally we just said, well, welcome to the Constitution, because, you do have a right to privacy. You do have a right to practice your spiritual beliefs, and you do have a right to assembly, and freedom of speech and all those things. Those are basic rights, and everything that they were doing was totally contrary to that, which goes against all of their oaths, and their mandate, So anyway, we kind of brought all this to their attention, but I wouldn't go the constitutional way. You want to totally separate completely. That's another long story. You want to become a divine being. So we're more like an embassy now, other than we're, put it this way: we're not a person, we're not a slave under the all caps anymore, and we're not subject to their jurisdiction.
Which is awesome. That brings up a lot, and that would be a show in itself, and maybe sometime we will walk down that road and do a show on that, because you've accomplished it, and then you can speak, you're not a straw man anymore is what it is.
Yeah, and I'll bring the people on the show that can really address this. Nate and Spencer, who've helped me out with this, they would come on the show too, and they've got all the details and are very eloquent in expressing this on how it's all done. And then another person, James McBride with divineprovince.org. I don't know if you've heard of him. But,
no.
I would really check into him and get him on the show, because he's got some huge breakthroughs that they've announced, as far as forgetting the debt and some of the other things that have gone all the way up again to the Queen and to the Pope, and things have been signed off. So there's going to be some huge changes. But there's going to be about a 3-year window where the banksters are going to still mess around and try to do what they're they're going to try to do, as they always do. But they have to go along with this because it's on the highest levels. The huge changes are on the highest levels, so it's going to eventually come down to you and me. Within the next 3 years. I think it's going to happen much faster than that.
And thanks for sharing that with us, James, because a lot of controversy right now, as you well know, is the negative timeline and the positive timeline. And I think a lot of us have really gotten the spiritual memo, so to speak, that we really need to focus on that positive timeline, manifesting it. And so this is just more evidence, if you will, and validation of what you've just accomplished in the last year for all of us to know that it is time for change and to make these changes, as you say, coming from the highest, the divine, the highest order on the planet, to make those changes, because even though it was difficult and it was like a war and it was crazy and you had to really fight for your divine right, once they lose, they lose. I mean, once you get past a certain point, you have now accomplished something, and then of course you've got to continue to uphold divine rights. So awesome, and congratulations. I really appreciate that. It's wonderful news.
Yeah, it is coming on the highest order, as you said, seen and unseen, because there are beings. A lot of people don't. I guess I need to clarify this, but the old saying Anunnaki was those who came from heaven to earth. And it's not just one group. That could apply to a lot of different groups, but people refer to one group. And there were some beings that came here that tinkered with humanity. There's been beings coming back and forth and colonizing the earth for 650 million years. So this has been going on for a long time. But there are beings that are coming that would be referred to as the gods. They're not the fallen ones that came here and fell and created all kinds of havoc. But those beings are returning now. And, the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, there's an Orion Council of Light, there's Arcturians, all these higher beings now are pressing hard on the earth, and they're implementing what I call universal law, or principles, necessary for a healthy society and environment, as well as the manifestation, or there's a quickening between action and reaction. And so karma is just, becoming truckma, and it's coming real fast now. And we've been going through huge shifts of energy to help us get through on the positive timeline. And, one of those came through last Friday. I just got inundated with people saying, what is going on? I'm an emotional wreck. I'm all over the place. I'm fighting with my mate I don't know why this is all coming up. But this huge push of energy came through, and it pushed up everything that's been repressing, the divine feminine, and all the rejection energies and issues and oppression energies and everything all just came up and got processed, it seems like, in just a 2-day period. And it was just, it was like bedlam for a while. And the women were really, stepping in their power and unloading, and the men were going, what the hell do I do now? And didn't figure out what to do with it. And I was telling them, we need to just sit back and let the process happen and listen. Don't try to fix it, support it, allow it to happen, and get behind this balancing movement that's happening on the earth. So that's one that almost everybody I know felt. I don't know anybody that didn't feel that, last
Correct.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that time period around there, people were just really wigging out.
Correct. And we actually mentioned it opening on Friday's show. I definitely went through something that was much longer than 3 days. But when you describe the Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing, you're right. There was a huge shift, and it was. You're exactly right on what to do when that happens, because you can't resist it. You have to just let it go, because it really screws with your head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And men always want to fix it, or they want to defend themselves or whatever else. And you can't, you just have to let it go through. You You have to let the process finish and then work on it later, you know?
Yes, agreed. And I don't think that, a lot of us are willing or able or all the rest of it. We just, it hits us, and then it takes a few days to even figure out that this is energetic, that it's not just life on life terms. There's something extra.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a release. And I don't know if you noticed it, but there was an absolute, I could just cry with joy. With joy. There was a release that came somewhere around Sunday night, Monday morning. Something changed. Even my own household and my animals changed overnight. Like something, they relaxed.
Yeah, we raise yaks here, and we have this huge bull, and this bull just came over and he buried his head in my chest and was saying, "Scratch me," and he was just standing there, just calm, and he just wanted to be, petted and things like that. And all the animals, I was here, just observing, the way the animals, like you're saying, were reacting to it, and they were feeling it too. And it was a planetary shift that happened, and it was pretty undeniable. And I got emails and phone calls from all over the world saying, what is going on? And we were told that the gods were behind this, or the goddesses, you might say, were behind this energy. The ancient gods are involved in this, along with all the other beings, and they're giving, I would say, planetary lessons, or just turning the dial up so we can clear out all these old wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences, and get on with the awakening and healing process.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned trauma, because I too spoke with many people who were having, and you'll know what I mean, and I think the listeners will totally identify. In this period, in the last month or two, there's been something that, like, if you didn't learn something from a particular situation, it comes back up again, like in a week. And then you've got to deal with it again. But let's say you had a situation a week ago, James, that was sort of a traumatic event. Then the situation comes up again in a week, and it triggers the trauma you had last week. And so, right? And so, and I agree with you that it's sort of a discerning, it's sort of mind, body, well, it's mind, body, spirit. It's a discernment that's coming into play. And I don't like to use the word test. I've never liked the word test. I think it's very dogmatic. You're being tested. But I think that it felt sort of like that. It would trigger the trauma that you had only a week or two ago, and then you sort of felt full, already of trauma. And I actually had a panic attack one evening, but I knew who to talk to, and in 10 minutes I was out of it. But I'm saying I didn't even know I was having a panic attack. And I want to share with the listeners, and James, I'm sure you'll validate this, that when we're going through this whole planetary sort of energetic shift push, and we can sort of recognize it, how many days into it, whatever, is not about the circumstances in our life at all. It has nothing to do with the dishwasher broke, the car tire went flat. It is one of the exceptions, I think, to it has nothing to do with what's in front of us. It has more to do with what you just said. Clear it up. It's a time to release the lineage, if you will, of our traumas. Like, it's a time to really dump it so that we don't keep reacting and stay in the state of fear in this matrix.
I agree 100%. We have to become the observer and observe our emotions, as they're coming up, and the old wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences. If we don't get the right conclusion from them, they continue, as you said. They just roll around and come back energized and amplified, with these energies. And so we have to get the right conclusion from these experiences so they can settle into the soul as wisdom, and then we're done with them. And, the best one to help you out with that is your own God self, the God within. But there's other people that are very plugged in that can help you through the transition as well. So I always tell people, it's time to support the process, be kind to each other, allow the process, don't get into reactionary mind. And learn to just hold space, as these processes are going on.
Do you find, I love what you just said. It's like eating ice cream listening to you right now. I love it because you're so validating, because I use the same language this weekend with quite a few people, be the observer. And where are we getting this new language and hold space? This is fairly new language for us. Where are we getting it from?
For me, God, this is like old language I've been talking.
Right. Well, for you, but for some of us, this is brand new language.
It is. And it's funny because what I'm seeing is as this energy comes in, there's so many different levels to it. It's going right down to the DNA and activating the DNA. And one of the DNA lines that's being activated is the telepathic lines. And so we are moving into unity consciousness and becoming very telepathic and very much more sensitive and aware. And so in that morphogenic field, this wisdom is being planted, it seems, and by some of us here on the earth, and I think it's being implemented by higher dimensions as well. And then there really is only one mind. We all draw off the same mind, just different levels or aspects of it. And, once we get past our body and our personality, which we're all moving beyond, we go into interdimensional mind where everything is one and connected, or more connected all the way to the source. And so that's what I see happening. It's like the 100th monkey or critical mass, whatever you would call it. Everybody has a name for it, but it's pretty much the same event.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it. And, if you want to become the observer, can you just give us a little trick on how we do that? What do we need to tell ourselves so that in a situation that's really hyper awareness and really, like you said, charged with either negative or positive things, how do we step out and become the observer?
With myself, I've taught for years deep meditation techniques and the basics of, focus on love and joy and bliss until you become it, and realizing that basically the source itself, in its most unlimited understanding, is just pure love and joy and bliss. And it's unconditional love. It doesn't have an ego to judge. It's beyond all that. It's like the sun. So the more we can hold that space and stay in that space and meditate, on every level, our bodies are going to adjust easier. We're going to have all kinds of healing things happen with us. We're going to have our emotional bodies are going to settle down, and our mental bodies, and we do practices here that are they call them the practice of no mind. It's like Qigong, and when we're doing these practices, they're very simple practices, but you have to use both sides of your body at the same time, and so it balances out your mind, and it puts you in a space of no mind to where the higher mind can actually come in. So there's a lot of practices we need to do, but we really need to just get out of all the psychic turbulence, even the electronic turbulence, all that stuff. Get out in nature as much as possible and get into that quiet time and really get to know yourself. And when I'm saying yourself, not the ego self, but the God self within.
And how do we get what we need through this? Do we just ask for it?
I think it's more important you have to initiate it. You have to practice it. We do practices here where we heal any unseen negative influence before we even meditate. We clear the space, and we have those practices, and it's in both books. I teach people how to do that because it's so important. But there are like discarnate spirits and things like that out there that have, they have their mental and emotional bodies, and they will affect your life, your meditation, and everything else. And a lot of the thoughts and emotions aren't even yours that people are acting out. So it's really important to realize that, we can anchor ourselves in our own bliss and our own love and joy, and we can learn to heal any unseen negative influences and catch ourselves being the observer and go, wow, where'd that come from? Where'd that feeling come from? And it doesn't matter if it's yours or theirs. It's just energy, and you can clear it. There's techniques to clear it, and that's what we teach here.
That's awesome, because how many times do we hear others say, Hey, James, I just have to say, we're getting a bunch of posts and everything. I'm not in the chat room. And by the way, hello, chat room, and thanks for joining us just on Facebook alone. We have a love fest going on because you're on the show this evening. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad to know I have at least one fan.
At least one fan. Well, let's see. Cheryl, Andrea, Debbie, Kat, Desiree, Kevin. Kevin even said he and his wife planned for it because they're usually in bed, so they got everything done just so they can listen to the show this evening. And Alan Jones, so they're all just throwing hearts out to you and everything, and just they're loving every minute of it.
Oh, great! Yeah, to me, it's you don't want to swell with pride when you hear that stuff, but you don't want to shrink in fear when the other stuff comes at you.
Oh, I know.
Try to keep an even keel on all that, but I really appreciate everybody, enjoying the reflection.
Oh, absolutely, I'm sure, and so do I. It's nice to feel. So, moving right along, what do you think is, and I think this is a very necessary question, James. What is the biggest obstacle that we all have right now, do you think, in your opinion, what you're seeing? You meet a lot of people, you talk to a lot of people, you have been teaching for many years, you've met some of the most fabulous divine individuals throughout your life. What do you think is one of our biggest obstacles?
I tell you what, from what I've seen, is that there's like a sandwich going on, you might say, and we have the most exquisite beings and higher dimensional beings pressing in with their higher consciousness and energy and other creational abilities, you might say, and spiritual technologies. And then we've got, some of the inner earth beings as well, and they're extremely advanced beings. And the earth itself is going through her process where she's just expanding and lit up right now, and she's ready to burst. But we've got this kind of middle level, which is the biggest problem, and it has to do with the Illuminati and the unseen negative influences that they worship and try to draw in. And those energies right there are the biggest stumbling block. And these guys, the influences that they've given their power to and given up their souls and become basically puppets or little Autobots for the dark force, you might say. That force right there does not care at all about humanity and Earth. As a matter of fact, they hate creation. They hate the source and the expression of the source and the beauty of creation here on the earth. They are at total odds with it, and that's why they can do what they do. That's why we have the wars and the chemtrails and whole cities being leveled and destroyed and things of that nature. It's because of these very beings. And the human spirit is pretty strong. It takes a lot to knock it down and a lot of influence to get them to actually do acts like that. There are, acts that are very harmful to humanity and the earth. We have to be so heavily programmed and so pushed down and brainwashed and things like that. So those energies, what I call the Archon Matrix right now, is the biggest problem on the planet. And it is at the highest levels. There's some regenerative ETs, some reptilian energies and some grays and some dark, tall grays and things like that. And then and then there's some kind of demonic type energies and really confused, messed up humans that are in the lower astral level. And those energies are actually playing on people here in the physical that also have the same attitudes and emotions. They're very greedy. They're very self-absorbed, very selfish. It's all about me, that program, huge sense of entitlements and actually no respect for humanity and the earth. And those type of people are running around as their little Autobots. And unfortunately, they're holding some of the highest positions of power on the planet right now. And then there's a trickle-down effect. But what's happening is that these energies are getting just hammered from above and below, they're sandwiched in the middle and they don't know where to go, and they're going nuts, and they're just lashing out at everything, trying to create as much chaos as possible, as much pain and division and sorrow as possible, because that's what they feed off of. That's what they live off of. That's what holds their world together. And that's coming to an end, and we can all be a participant in that by not being a willing participant in anything that's harmful to humanity, the earth, and get back into our hearts and, allow love to be the manifesting force behind everything we do and say in all creation. Then we can align ourselves with the higher, more benevolent forces, and this is all going to come crashing down. But it's already fallen apart. This Archon matrix I call it social consciousness, where people have been totally programmed that everything is exterior. Their love, their joy, their self-worth, everything is all exterior. They've been programmed to look in that direction. And that's all falling apart, and people are having to go within now and get in touch with their hearts, and the heart is connected to the soul, which is connected to the source. And so people are walking away from this matrix now, and they're finding out there is no love or joy. You can't eat little green pieces of paper. You can't breathe them. When the oxygen's gone, you can't drink them when the water's gone. People are starting to wake up real fast that this is not worth it to be enslaved through dependency and be a part of this network when there's a whole nother world waiting just around the corner, where a world of universal peace and brother-sisterly love and individual freedom and prosperity for everybody. And it's called unity consciousness. And it ties in with all the physics and everything else that they're coming out with right now, is that, what you do to anything, you do to the whole, and you do to yourself, because it's all connected. So people are starting to wake up, and this whole old network is falling apart, and it needs to. And people like yourself and myself and many other people are on the forefront of this movement, tearing down this network, opening up people's minds and hearts, and allowing people to see what's really going on, so they can actually realize they do have a choice. They don't have to participate in this old network anymore, this old program.
Yeah, and I don't think that people want to anymore. There are so many people who are, tired. They're just tired of it. And I think that, what do you think about this? I personally think that they, meaning the Illuminati, powers that be, secret societies, the Archon, matrix network, what have you, I think when they crashed the mortgage, market and Wall Street at the same time, unheard of in history, when they crashed all markets and just sort of ate everything up in the world, it took houses away, took credit cards, cars, this, that, I think they actually did us a favor. And I don't think that they did it to do us a favor.
Exactly. These people are very clever, but they're not wise.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they have no wisdom whatsoever, and they always do themselves in. They never flourish. They never prosper, and everything they do is unsustainable. And so they cut their nose off to spite their face or whatever, and they don't really get it that everything that they've been feeding on that supported their hierarchical network and everything else, they've just yanked out from under themselves. And so their world is totally unsustainable. They know people are waking up, and that's their biggest fear right now, is that they know what they've done, and they know people are finding out all over the world, all the whistleblowers, everything else. Everybody's finding out who these guys are, what they've been up to. All their plans are being revealed, which is the apocalypse, which is the great unveiling, of everything. And it's all coming down. They know it's coming down, and they know it's unsustainable. And a lot of them right now are just heading for the hills and getting out of Dodge. And they know it's coming down, and there's forces beyond their comprehension that are coming in, and some of them are fully aware of it. And some are healing and awakening and saying, hey, we've got to shift. We got to get with this program. And I really believe, I was talking to Alfred Weber the other day, and we were talking about this truth and reconciliation panels and things like that, hopefully with some teeth in them. And we need to start moving in that direction and just put an end into this. I mean, there's other elements out there that just want the heads of these banksters and all these people that have just been wreaking havoc on humanity and creating all these problems. And there's other people that say, hey, I just want it to stop. I don't want revenge. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
I don't want any karma around that. I just want it to stop, and I want the earth to go forward and move back into Eden, what it was created originally to become, and get rid of the people that hijacked it and get it back on track. And that's where I'm at. I'm not here to condemn anybody or harm anybody or anything else. I just want to see the earth get back, hit, I want to see the reset button get hit so it gets back to its original intent.
True. And, with that in mind, the reset button could be a number of things, I think that you're absolutely spot on, James, with the idea that we are starting to understand that there is a consciousness. There is, like you said, everything that we do affects the whole. We were starting to develop an awareness for that, or remember, whichever way you want to look at it. And with that in mind, I do observe, in the last 4 years, we all jumped on Facebook at some time or another. And I can tell you this, in all my groups on Facebook, the amount of arguing and shilling and disinformation and just rudeness that went on, it's not even 50% of it now. It's not even 25%. Most people are actually being supportive. They're actually listening to one another. And even if they disagree, they're not name calling. They're not putting out a bunch of disinfo. It's so interesting to see just on Facebook, a social media network, the evolution of those of us who have been using it for quite some time, and the amount of people who are just been around all, for the 4 or 5 years, who we've come to know and love, and who are working together in a very positive manner, in a very loving manner. And these people that were mean and trashing our names and trashing us and trashing even the YouTube channels, they're sort of going away. I mean, they're not all gone, but no. There's less and less of them is what I'm trying to say. And to me, that's pretty clear what's happening.
Yeah, I agree. What I'm seeing at some of the highest level, that things are unfolding and being exposed for what they are. And I'm seeing a major shift even in the UFO community, where a lot of people are being totally nailed, on a lot of their indiscretions and what they're doing. And there's so much... there's planned opposition on the highest levels there, a lot of it. There's a lot of disinformation and shills and other people in that movement. And people are starting to wake up and figure out who they are. And they're tired of the fear-based message, and all the negativity and everything else. People are saying, hey, I want to hear something positive. I don't want to create that reality. I don't want to hold that reality in my consciousness. It feels terrible to sit and listen to this stuff. It doesn't feel good anymore. And people are walking away from it. And there's a huge transition going on right now. And I'm seeing the same thing with the news, with everything. People are just turning off their TVs and they're going to alternative newses and looking on, the web and things like that to find out the truth, of what's really going on. And, the old paradigm, the old program of the total deception and manipulation and everything else is just coming down. It's just falling apart.
It's not working anymore, and it's not what we need. And I think what you just described as well, which is a beautiful thing, is that we are going to each other for the real, for the truth, for the news, whatever. We're trusting each other more than we're trusting, let's say, a mainstream news tabloid, internet tabloid, or television station. And that's huge, because 5 years ago, that is not where we went for our news. So you know what I mean? So what has evolved and been created so very quickly is, and we're getting very responsible. Those of us who are in, tabloids like myself, we're getting extremely responsible with doing our homework so that what we're reporting to the public is the truth and not just somebody's concocted idea of a conspiracy. So you're right. It's all moving in the right direction. Now, do you know anything about the crossing timelines in August, or the two timelines coming together? Because that's something in the Alfred's talking about. Brad Olson, I think you know quite a number of these people. What's your check on? What's your feelings about August? Is this an opportune time for us to really kick into gear on that positive timeline to ensure that it happens?
Well, they've been telling us that the next 3 weeks, everything is going to bust loose. And we're watching it right now. And, we just had an event, and I just got a news link from, I guess there's a NASA guy talking about this huge coronal hole. It's like 1/3 of the sun just lifted off and is heading our way. And I haven't had a chance. I just got it. I haven't had a chance to validate that. But if that's the case, that much energy coming in is going to make a huge shift, in consciousness. So people need to understand that information is transferred down the vibrational continuum, and we can go from consciousness to light to energy to mass, to the physical. And the physical is just condensed consciousness or information. And that's all it is. It's information that was transferred and solidified from the next dimension up, or the next higher frequency. And, I'm sure there's other terminology or words that some of the scientists are saying I should be using, but I'm just trying to get a point across. But the thing about that's happening right now is that when you have one of these massive gamma ray bursts, the gamma rays are seventh level consciousness. It's seventh dimensional consciousness. It's the plane of bliss that's slamming the planet. And we're getting hit by one gamma ray burst after another. I think we just had one yesterday or the day before yesterday. But it seems like almost every other day or every day we're getting hit by one of those from some unknown source, or some other place in the galaxy. And we're going into galactic plane, and that alignment with galactic plane, and those fields are hitting the planet. We're going into a supercharged place in space. We've never been before. There's no recorded history for this one. And so that's, accelerating everything and agitating, amplifying everything. And so if you understand semantics, every time there's a huge burst of energy hitting the planet or coming in, it's going to agitate everything, and everything's going to go into chaos, and then it's going to reform again in a higher order. And that's what's happening. Our bioelectric fields around the human body are being just slammed with this energy. It's creating emotional outbursts, releases, healings. Our bodies are having to adjust to the new higher frequencies, and they're talking to us, and we're getting all kinds of symptoms from that. Dizziness, nausea. We're getting nauseated sometimes. We're having all these health crises that come and go. If we focus on them and freak out about them, they're going to stay, but a lot of them just pass on through. But there's so many things happening right now that are in alignment with these timelines merging that I'm not sure if it's hard to pin things down to an exact date or a time, but the energy's here. It's coming in. There's beings behind this energy. I don't know exactly when this huge shift is going to occur, but I think it's a series of little shifts building up to a really big shift that we're coming into. But it could happen very easily between now and definitely between now and November. It's going to happen, but I can't really pin it down to an exact date. But we've been getting information on high that the next 3 weeks is going to be very volatile. A lot of change happening, and it's a good thing. When you see the chaos, just know that it's going to reform into a higher order. So don't get upset about the changes we're seeing and the riots we're seeing and everything else. That's all part of the process.
Yes, and I was just going to ask you, what is the highest order and use of this energy? Because like you said, everything's being shaken up, including, and by the way, I did get that story last night myself. and haven't had time to delve into it much myself about, this big chunk of the sun that broke
Yeah.
off, and you're saying, what do you mean? And then you hear it's headed for Earth, and you're like, what does that mean? Is that going to hit Earth? Are we going to be a fireball or what have you? But with this energy, because it is sounding more and more like the shake up, it's kind of like, things that don't belong are falling off and falling down or breaking or what have you. And that energy, as you said, James, is only something that's going to allow us to move up to these higher levels and make use of this wonderful energy. How does one do that? I mean, when that's happening, because some are affected more than others. I mean, some people's lives, and you know this, James, it's almost sad to me. Some people's lives are really being rocked hard. I mean, they're losing everything. And some people are not in that place, but they're still being affected. And then there are a few who just totally go gangbusters, bring it on. There's some crazy people in my life, that are just bring it on. Yeah. I know that, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, don't even stand near me and say that, So, and I know the common thoughts right now, the most common are people wondering, where did my life go? People are really saying that. And these are people on the front lines. These are people who are doing the work that you and I have been doing for quite some time. They are the ones that are saying, where did my life go? I want my life back. And at the same time, out of that same breath, they say, but what would I do? I could never do anything than what I'm doing right now. See, so they're right there on that. They're not on a fence. They're not on any fence. They've already made the decision. I'm on the front lines and this is where I'm staying. But at the same time, it's like they're sort of grieving, maybe. Is this what it is? Grieving that time of what we might have even referred to as bliss at one time, James, because we just didn't know all of this other stuff was coming that we're in right now. So do you find that people are also experiencing quite the same thing?
Yes, I know quite a few people that are in immense changes, and they don't know that, it's hard for them to jump. It's like and to launch the boat. Just launch it. You can make course corrections later. They want everything all lined out ahead of them. Well, and it's about insecurity, and they want security, and they said, I have this, I have these responsibilities, I have to do this, I have to do this, and they're looking at all these things. And then they're seeing that they are trapped in a world they don't like, they don't enjoy, they're not happy about it, and they're being forced to do things they don't want to do. And it's going to be harder and harder to do things that are not in alignment with your joy and your soul. And you might as well just give it up now, because it isn't going to work later anyway, and shift in. But we have to realize the same creator God within you that drove your boat into your present circumstances can drive you out of it and create different circumstances. So it's a matter of not worrying about things. Worry is a form of prayer. You're going to create what you're worrying about. It's go back into creationary mind and get out of reactionary mind and worrying, and start creating, the future you want to see, and then have the courage to step through the doors that open for you, and things will work out. I mean, I did that here. It was crazy because I was in commercial real estate. I had my own office. I had people working for me. I was on the board of director of the Chamber of Commerce. I was doing all these things, and I had the drowning experience. And I came back to all that, and I saw it for what it was. And I walked away, and I have more now than I ever had there, back then. And I let it all go and gave it all up and just trusted soul and spirit and went for it. And now I have so much more and what I have now is real. It's natural, it's real, it's totally aligned with the higher consciousness and energy and what's happening on the planet. So it will sustain itself. And that's what I'm seeing, is that, it's rough, and it's going to be hard, and we might have to let go of a few things, but you're going to find out those things that you let go of you didn't really need anyway. And a lot of times, as soon as you let go of something else is going to come in to take its space. It's much better.
Well, I agree, and the whole social engineering, James. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a component. That the brainwashing.
Hmm.
We were taught. We were brainwashed into thinking that having a Rolex watch is way better than having like your soulmate.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit of a reversal, and you're absolutely right. The sustainability part. I love when you say that because the long term, the long haul, the passion, the what we really did create ourselves to be. Why we even stopped by planet Earth, so to speak. We really didn't come here to be slave driven and really just boxed in and then shut off of all of our natural, God given feelings and emotions and rights and sovereignty and truth. So that's like highway robbery, man. The
Yeah.
most right, the most important things we've been getting like just taken away from us. So you're absolutely right, and I bet you would also say, what you gave up in real estate and all the rest of it. When you had that, position and your business, your heart has probably just grown and grown and grown and expanded. That's the whole thing, right? It's like just when you
Oh
can't
yeah.
think you can take any more joy comes, and that's what we're supposed to be doing here.
Oh, I agree. And two, it's like the work. For over 30 years, I've been engaging in intense uh, energies, higher conscious and energy. Going back to the source, the experience that I had in the near-death experience, and hanging out with seventh dimensional, even eighth dimensional beings, things of that nature. Going even beyond the void and hanging out with beings like that. And when you start, creating a network like that, and you've got, Pleiadian friends and an Archangel or Andromedan friends and things like that, and they're just a thought away, and you're just getting all blissed out by merging with their energies, it's, how can you go back? How can you go back to, a society that is so lacking in love and joy and bliss and harmony that
And we are back on a Tuesday evening. Of course, we're speaking with James Gilliland for those of you who have just joined us. And thanks for all the questions that you guys are posting on Facebook. I'll definitely ask James the questions because those are great questions. So thank you for providing them. Anyone in the chat room, of course, if you have any questions for our guest this evening, just go ahead and post your questions. And Thomas, our wonderful producer, will pick them up and we'll get them to James. So we were talking about this whole, what's coming up for us here, in August, September, October, November type of thing, and the shakeup that's going on and so forth on the planet, and that these are good things, and that we've been just talking with James about the higher dimensional beings and the support that we've got, and the the sort of chaotic and how chaos is sort of getting worse and worse, and how we can stabilize ourselves, balance ourselves by means of meditation, by means of focus, focusing on the love, the powerful beings that we are, the unifying with one another, sort of just giving up the fight to be a slave, because really if you're resisting moving towards that place of unity where we really do begin to recognize that we're all here together as brothers and sisters, and that we've got brothers and sisters and cousins and all the rest of them, all over the planets, and that we just have a very, at this point, limited view of just how big we are and how big they are. And James was talking about also the planet, that she's just, she's booming right now, and she's ready, and we're getting ready. Once, James, we actually hit that, you referenced it in the first hour, that 100th monkey tipping point, whatever we want to call it. Once we hit that place, are we going to feel as a planet, and I do mean all living things, I don't mean just people, Are we going to feel a little bit? Are we going to feel that shift? Are we going to know that all of a sudden something did shift, and we're now in a territory that, even though we've never been here before, that we're in a territory where we know we're. I don't like to use the word winning, but I'm going to use it. You can call it something else, but that we're winning, that it's happening, that we have manifested the change that we've been working on for hundreds of years, really.
Yeah, I think we're in it already. I mean, I'm already feeling it. I'm feeling we already went over the edge, and I'm feeling what's coming too. And so, that old saying, resistance is futile. There's just too much energy coming in, and what's behind it is so awesome and so unbelievable. And to know that we're all connected to that, and to connect into that energy, it's going to carry us through. But if we keep running around thinking we're a slave or a body or a personality and a victim, then, we're going to create a real mess for ourselves. So it's up to us to rise to the occasion and flow with this shift in these energies. There's a lot of personal responsibility involved in this process, because they're not here to do everything for us. But I think if enough people, it's going to be, it's like that, you get a wave going, you get enough people waking up, and this wave is coming anyway, regardless. It's going to go, it's going to push. I think it's already it feels to me like we already went over the edge. We're not out of the water yet. I mean, there's a lot of, I think the Earth is going to still go through some changes, and she's going to do some cleanup things and things like that. And we are going to reunify with the greater family of man. As all the prophecies have talked about. But, we might have to let go of a few things. We might have to let go of that beachfront property or a few other things because of some of the shifts. But, that's what I'm seeing. I'm really worried about the East Coast right now. I've been really feeling a huge buildup for an event to happen there, and I'm really hoping that gets shifted right now.
What part of the East Coast are you feeling?
I'm just looking all along the coast, a lot of water movement, and
Okay.
And so I'm really hoping that somehow that gets avoided or changed. And I don't know the source of it yet, but I mean anywhere along the coast, I think are going to be a little rocky, and hopefully, because we're already going through a magnetic pole shift, and usually a partial physical pole shift follows that. And if it's a fast shift, if it's a quick jolt or a fast shift, or it might be a series of jolts, water's going to move, and there's going to be a lot of water displacement. So, all the evidence is going in that direction right now.
Okay. So, yeah. So I guess anyone who's listening that's on the East Coast, and close to the water, I imagine even a couple of miles away from the water, maybe just pay more attention to what they're being guided to do, because you will be guided away from harm if you trust that, right?
Oh, yeah. And, you might be able to get enough groups together to change that, to get
there you go.
Divine intervention to change the outcome.
That's another way, and I think there are a lot of people doing that as well. It seems obvious to me, James, that we are totally capable of being in the driver's seat, and I think the only thing that has kept a lot of folks out of the driver's seat is fear.
Exactly.
So. Right?
You talk about 7 billion strong,
Yes.
Well, if 7 billion awake, I mean, what's that to just a few politicians or just a few families or whatever else, And so that's the whole line is that the 7 billion are awakening, and they are going to awaken. And when they awaken to what's been done to them and how much has been done to them, they're not going to be happy campers. And, hopefully we can direct this in a nonviolent manner, or direct this in like a truth and reconciliation panel or something like that, to where we can just focus more on the outcome and healing, versus, eye for an eye, or, that makes both people blind, eventually. So anyway, that's what I'm hoping for.
Why don't we just get, being there 7 billion of us, and then, I don't know, a few 100,000 of them globally. Why don't we just get them another planet and then they can just go live the way they want to live and we can
Yeah.
live here the way we want to live? I mean, isn't that an option?
Well, my idea was just to find a planet full of predators and parasites and leeches.
Ah,
Pop them off because then they'd be with people of like mind, you know. But I mean, that's kind
oh
of
gosh. Well, that's another question. Then that would be another question because this has come up before. You know, all kidding aside, James, those Illuminati and global cabal and global government, corporate dudes and women that are on our planet that control, trying to control everything. Can can we organize as well prayer circles to pray for them?
yeah. Well, definitely, that was my next thing I was going to talk about. We're on the same wavelength. Is that one awakened being affects thousands, if not millions, through the morphic field, the morphic resonance or whatever. And there's a lot of books and a lot of science behind this. And so if we rise to the occasion and wake up and start focusing and get into creationary mind and focus on the world we want to see, we can out-manifest these beings, these other people, very easily. And that higher consciousness and energy is going to create a quickening. And when you forgive them, that's the nastiest weapon you can ever have in your arsenal is forgiveness. Because when you forgive somebody and you truly forgive them, it leaves your field and it's amplified. And you use your higher self and you focus on love and joy and true forgiveness. When you forgive and you release that, it leaves your field and it goes back to them. And then they're going to have an experience around that. That karma is going to go back. And then they're going to have to deal with the lessons around that experience. So people go, well, I can't forgive. I'm afraid of forgiving because then they're going to come back and get me again and things like that. No, the wisdom settles in the soul. You're wiser for it. You just don't do the same, make the same choices. But it's so important right now to focus on love and joy and bliss and forgive and fill every cell of your being with that love and joy and bliss right down to the atom itself. And then you're going to ascend. You don't ascend by leaving here or trying to get out of here or whatever else because you're still in judgment. You haven't mastered judgment and you're still doing the separation game and things like that. You ascend by bringing heaven to earth, right down into your very physical body itself. And then that creates a quickening and your body starts vibrating faster. So it's by seeing the physical as divine, including your own physical body, you create the ascension process. And unfortunately, a lot of yogis die because they say the body's dust, it's Maya, it's nothing. Well, their body turns to dust because that's the program they're running. And they are very spiritually awake and connected and things like that, but they don't take the body with them. So they have to come back through the birth canal, and pick up a whole new ego and try to transcend that again. But there's another way of doing it. And hopefully enough people will just really anchor in that higher consciousness and energy and, move up the vibration continuum. Because as I said, we're not just a body and a personality. We're a body and a personality that is driven by a spirit, and that spirit is interdimensional. And you can go all the way back to the source on that vibration continuum and pull that energy in to shift the planet, and that's what we really need to be doing is hooking up to our own God selves, our own main teachers and guides and things like that, and start cleaning up the mess on the higher levels and anchor that energy in here. And then we're going to have a huge shift.
Now, have we ever, as human beings on the planet, have we ever been awake? I mean, there's a lot of evidence that appears to be there was a time where we had relationships with ETs, where we were comfortable with knowing who we were and did some really crazy things like build giant pyramids like the Pyramid of Giza, and all the rest, and invented fabulous, wonderful things. And it seems like there was a time that we related to this conversation. And then there's a gap of a couple thousand years.
Yeah.
That seemed like we got so disconnected and it was taboo to even talk like this. James, what happened? Did somebody really like take this place over and just stop us from knowing who we were? Because it doesn't make sense in the evolution of humans.
Well, there have been shifts and changes. There's been, pole shifts. There's been meteor impacts. There's been massive volcanic eruptions. There's misuse of technology with Atlantis and Lemuria or Mu that have created huge cataclysms where everybody had to start over as primitives. And you're back into the base 3. You're back into survival, sex, and power, basically when that happens. And that drops you down. And so at one time you might have had a fifth dimensional, totally blissed out society that was building these incredible buildings and levitating them and using super high tech, to cut the stones and everything else, to create these things. But, there was a fall, and, the book of Thoth or Thoth, everybody pronounces it differently, talks about how some beings started coming in and incarnated and kind of broke through the rift somehow. And all of a sudden we started getting some pretty nasty beings incarnating here. And they were focused on power over others and self-service and things of that nature. And just, it just didn't take a whole lot of them to try to overpower the others who didn't really know how to defend themselves or even deal with this kind of energy because it was foreign to them. So we have had quite a few rises and falls and huge cataclysmic changes on the planet, where people had to start over as primitives. And we're like a big genetic soup down here of the star nations, many different star nations. We're not just, an Anunnaki blend that was created. There's so much more going on here and so many more genetics, both human, animal, and plant genetics as well. That it's beyond imagination. So it's getting real strange as far as all the new information coming out now. That's very, very intense. That in the communities, in the archaeological communities, in the genetics and everything else, they're finding information out that is just totally, undermining the status quo and the standard story. Even the church is starting to say, hey, ETs do exist. They are here. It's a greater family of man and they're not to be feared. And, and so they're having to do this because there's this huge explosion of information coming in that they're having to deal with. And they can't suppress this anymore, including the government. It's like, well over 80 plus 90% of the people know that there is a cover up and UFOs do exist, according to major polls out there. But, they're still trying. And I'm saying, well, if we're a democracy or we should be a republic, actually, to set the record straight, and who are these guys working for? When over 80% of people are saying, hey, I'm sorry, tell us the truth. We already know the truth. Why don't you come clean? And that's what I don't understand about the Disclosure Project is that we're trying to get a group of people that have lied to us for over 60 years to finally tell us the truth, and to think they're not going to bend and twist that truth is a little crazy. And we're still looking for some external authority to tell us it's okay to know what we know and believe what we already believe. It just makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know why we're even asking them to disclose, or why don't we just disclose ourselves, period, to the public and say, this is what's going down. And if these guys want to keep lying, good for them. Vote them out of office.
That's a big controversy, I'm sure you know. And I think that more people than not, anyway, the ones I come across, James, are saying exactly what you're saying relative to government disclosure of any kind. Yeah. And this has occurred to a lot of people, in the last, specifically in 2012. People started to just wake up to the idea. And I think part of it is because, 2009 and 10 was all about petitions, 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 and going
Yeah.
to the EPA and going to the government and going to agriculture departments and going to, for everything under the sun, chemtrails and fluoride in the water and, the list goes on and UFO disclosure and blah, blah, blah. And I think that after everybody sort of realized that we were going nowhere, there was not one disclosure on any level, that all of these government agencies are not doing their job. At least they're not doing it for we the people. They're all on, literally this one side of the fence. They're all on that side of the fence. There's no one representing we the people anymore. And this is global. And I think what has happened is that we've all started come to the table with the idea that what you just said, that why are we going to them to tell us the truth when they designed all the cover-ups?
Yeah, exactly.
Like all of a sudden you go, wait, this like doesn't make sense anymore. And from there, that's where, we begin to take things into our own hands, and it's kind of tricky. Because how do you get corporations, to stop putting, toxins in our water? How do you get Monsanto to stop making GMO food? How do you, get the military to stop going to war and stop spraying this stuff in our skies? We've really figured this out. And you said it. 7 billion people strong, 7 billion people waking up. The problem is, and this goes right back to almost the first words out of your mouth when you came on the show this evening, it's the unseen. And I am so proud of humanity because we are tearing down the walls. We want to know what's behind those curtains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so soon enough, and using that evolution that we're going through and our telepathy that's starting to really kick in, we are starting to see the unseen.
Yeah.
And we know it, and we don't need the pathetic cabal validating us anymore.
No. Yeah. And it's sad because, that's the form of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And we've been doing that for 60 years. And I'm going, well, when are people going to snap out of this and just say, hey, I'm going to create my own reality here. I don't need to be taken care of. I don't need to have these people enslave me through dependency anymore. I'm going to seek out the fuelless energy technologies, the other technologies. I'm going to get sovereign off the grid. I'm going to pay for my land, patent my land, do whatever. It's like, and really start moving in that direction. Because the bottom line is you just have to not participate and defund it. And when you defund it, it stops, and as long as we're willing participants and we keep participating in that matrix, which is falling apart anyway. I mean, there's no way it can continue. And if we put our security in that, in following the status quo and being part of the herd, that's going to be our greatest insecurity in the future because it's totally unsustainable. And with the new energies coming in, it's going to collapse. It's inevitable.
Yeah, it certainly is. I love when you say, don't invest in don't comply, don't invest. And that's energy, folks. Don't invest your energy in them. Don't support them. We don't have to support anything we don't want to. And I put my money on humanity, so to speak. I put my heart on humanity. I'll put my energy on, I want to invest in humanity just like James does. So, James, we have a question real quick, and we might be able to catch it before the break. Alan Jones was asking if you could comment about recent sightings on the ranch because he's been looking at some of the uploads on your YouTube channel. Is there one that's been very recent that you might want to tell Alan about?
Well, yeah, if you go to Eceti Stargate on the YouTube channel, most of the latest stuff is there. And we have a lot of stuff. We've had, I don't know, have you ever had John Kelly on your show?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, he's amazing. But he's been diligent out here almost every night. And he's got quite the setup, for filming the UFOs. And he helps school people on how to do it and become your own disclosure, which is amazing. And he's been filming some incredible footage up here. And we've got some compilations up on YouTube. We're going to have some more up there and on the website. The website it hasn't been updated for a while, so we need to get it up on the website as well. But the Eceti Stargate on YouTube has a lot of the latest. But, we're a very, very small operation here. People think we have access to all these funds and everything else, and we don't. And I'm not very computer literate myself, and I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff. So we could really use some help, in reorganizing, doing a lot of our computer work and reorganizing our websites and getting the word out, even with the radio shows and things like that, getting those reorganized. But we're working on that right now. And, one of the projects, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to get the cat out of the bag, because you know how the powers that be are, they always sabotage it. But we're going to have a trailer out real soon, and I'll send that to you right away. And we are working on a movie that is going to expose this whole enchilada, and it's going to be a whole different kind of movie, and it's going to focus on the heart and the awakening and the process that we're all undergoing. And it's going to cover the shadow side of things, and it's going to cover the light side of things, and the dance back and forth all the way through. And it's going to change the planet once it gets out. When people see this movie, they go, "Oh my God, that's what."
Do you have a trailer for that movie yet? I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our listeners. As Hawk just said on the commercial there, that we are 100% listener supported, which is very important to us, and I'll tell you why. As soon as we start buying advertisement, the advertisers own us, and then before you know it, they start making rules, and before you know it, we are not a free speech radio station anymore. So Hawk built this so that we could remain free speech, effective speech, honorable and truthful and educational. So it really matters to us that you have been donating to keep me on the air, and I want you to know that I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, that you have helped to not only keep me on the air, but our listenership for the Truth Tonight Talk Radio has grown immensely because of you. So I want to thank you for that, and please just keep passing on the information because it's the truth and people need to hear about it. So James, in relationship to, you just turned everybody on the Eceti Stargate website and your Eceti Stargate YouTube, and I'll get that information out to the public for you as well. As we always do. Anybody ever looking for anything for James Gilliland, just go to the Truth Denied and go ahead and look at the schedule page. James is on frequently every year, so you'll see all of the information in past shows. The other question that somebody has, and I don't know if this is going to take a long time or if you could get to it, because I know we also want to talk about a couple of seminars coming up, and we really need to get that information out to the public, James. But Kevin Burke is asking, can we please ask James how he broke through the levels after his drowning NDE? And he says, can he expand on that a bit more, please? So he must have listened to another interview that you did. Very curious about how you broke through.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. It was a drowning, and there was some sneaker waves came in, and we were out body surfing in way out on a sandbar, and there was like maybe 8 to 10 foot waves, and I was captain of the water polo team and on the swim team and everything, and so I felt like I was bulletproof in the water, and I had a very humbling experience out there with nature. And these waves came in, and they were 25 to 27 foot tall waves and sucked the water out. And so I got just slammed by the first wave and had the wind knocked out of me. It collapsed my diaphragm, and I was trying to get up out of the water, and the next wave hit. And after the third wave, I just, I let go. I couldn't hold my breath any longer, and I was underwater, and I just went through the tunnel, that everybody talks about. And I didn't stop to talk. I went through many, many levels very fast. And there's a wonderful special effects on that in the movie Contact Has Begun. They did a great special effects on that. We have that, at eceti.org if people want to get that movie. Or I think it was in Netflix, and Guy MTV actually just played it recently. But that experience, after what I called, hanging with the source there, it was the most loving, joyous, blissful, golden white light energy you can imagine. There's no words for it. And I had a conversation with it, and then the first thing I said was how can I stay? And this consciousness was, I was unique yet one. I was a light being, but I had a greater light surrounding me. And so it came back to me and said, I didn't tell one of my children when to come or go. That's free will. And then the second thing I asked was, how can I earn the right to stay here? And it came back to me and said, you can't earn what is given freely and unconditionally. And so I had to totally reorganize my thoughts about the source or God or what it is, and so the next thing I asked was, how can I serve? And I didn't get an answer for a long time. I was waiting for the big list, of all the things you're going to have to do when you go back. And it came back to me and says, what do you want to do? What brings you joy? And I realized that the source is just pure love and joy and bliss. And the more we do what brings us joy and the more blissed out we are, the closer we are to the source. It's a matter of resonance and aligning with that higher consciousness and energy. And I realized that, basically the only reason we can't do that is because of all the wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences and limiting mental concepts and programs that we've had jammed down us here. And so after that, I said, I want to return and teach people about the true nature of the source. And I heard, as you wish. And the next thing I know, somebody's pulling me out of the water. And they pulled me up on the beach, and I passed out, and I woke up in a pool of water. And there's more to the story, but it's a pretty long one. But, that started a journey, a 30-plus year journey of studying with lamas and yogis and masters and people, incredible healers and process-oriented therapies and things like that to learn how to assist people in making their own connection.
That's wonderful. Other people are commenting too about a drowning. One person, Izora, is saying that she drowned twice and her husband's drowned once. Yeah. And he remembered being walked back to shore, walking on the bottom of the sand with a beautiful woman holding his hand, and then she didn't see anything like that, but she said she felt absolutely calm. So there's a resonance there. They're saying, wow, that's nuts, but it sounds like what you just described is the source is truly the nature of unconditional everything. There's no, in other words, the source didn't say to you, all right, in order to get your life back, I want you to do this, do this, do this. There is an absolute free will, and basically source just said, whatever you want to do. There's no, you want to go back, go back.
Yep, pretty much. It was all up to me. And what was interesting too is that what I realized is that, we have all these isms and schisms and things we have to do to earn the love of God or earn the acceptance and approval of God. And it just doesn't work that way. You are totally loved and approved and accepted unconditionally. The problem is down here on Earth is we live on an action-reaction planet, where consciousness creates reality, and we magnetize people and events to us according to our consciousness. So it's up to us to clean up our act and not create karma, and not make a mess out of our lives. And we always have the source to connect into for that total unlimited forgiveness, And if you want to go biblical, Jesus pretty much spelled it out. He said, neither do I judge thee, nor does my Father judge thee. He said, go and sin no more. So he's saying, if you're blowing it, just stop blowing it, forgive yourself, forgive the others, and move on, gain the wisdom from the experience and move on. And, sin is an archery term, basically. It just means you missed the mark, and so, you've got a whole quiver of arrows, reload,
Right. And, get into the process and stop placing so many expectations about the outcome, it sounds like, I love that sin means you just miss the mark. That's wonderful. Which we all do all the time, and it should be uneventful, Don't you think that humans, You just said we got to get our act together, and something flashed before my eyes when you said that. And I saw, how many times a day do we teach somebody else in our life the wrong thing? Oh, you better not do that. You better not do that. Last time I did that, oh no, you know what happened? I fell off my bike and then I skinned my legs. I was in the emergency. No, you better not go bike riding up there. Don't go bike. Don't even go up that road. Go the other road. How many times do we share an experience like you have said that with the wrong outcome, or we've labeled it wrong, and then we share that with somebody else and get them all freaked out? We're all teaching each other this fear language.
Yeah.
So, right?
Exactly. What I've seen is that, we try to heal ourselves through others, and we often blame and project our own unhealedness on others. And that's a common thing happening on the planet right now. And we've got to transcend that victim program and get off the wheel. It's like a hamster wheel. You've got the persecutor, the victim, and the savior on this little hamster wheel running over and over again. And eventually we're going to have to step off the wheel and become the observer and go, you know what? I'm not going to be the savior this time. I'm not going to be a victim this time. And I'm not going to persecute anybody either to get even for what happened to me. I'm just going to step back and take full responsibility for this and start creating a different reality. Maybe a bigger wheel, until we get off the wheel in general.
That is wonderful. I mean, it's true, though. It's so true. Transcend the victim wheel. Someone should do a documentary on that. Call it Transcend Victim Wheel. Because you're right on the money. And the only way we're going to do it is to get out of the habit. Because what do we have control over? We're always talking about on this planet, like, I'm just powerless over this, and I'm powerless over the IRS, and I'm powerless over my bank, and I'm powerless, over my mortgage company. I'm powerless over the guy that collects my rent, whatever. I mean, it's such a big word. I'm just powerless, powerless, powerless. If we could teach each other that we're not powerless at all, share with each other, be more focused on the words that we use with each other, and more encouraging, more creative, more outside the box, we'd all be a lot less stressed out too.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to talk about. That you're in reactionary mind when you're doing that, and you're in victim consciousness, and you're running that same program again and again and again, and you got to step out of that and shift into creationary mind. And start focusing on what you want to experience, what you want to create, and realize, that you are going to have challenges along the way, and you're going to have a lot of experiences, and a lot of little what you don't want are going to manifest before you get what you want, because sometimes there's learning experiences along the way. And it's just a process. But the more you focus and become the observer and put your attention on what you do want and stop worrying about what you don't want, because again, worry is a form of prayer. You're going to manifest that too. You can start just driving yourself out of any predicament, because the same creator that drove you into it can drive you out of it, and that creator is within.
Absolutely. I think that we are starting to get it. I think you're right. I think we're starting to get it, and it's only coming probably from, as you said a few times on the program, eventually even the hamster gets tired of running around the wheel.
Yeah.
Even eventually the hamster realizes, I'm not going anywhere. I'm getting off this wheel. I'm going to make it stop, and gets off the wheel. So I think it's out of probably a combination of things. You're tired, you're over it, it's boring, and it's boring. To live in a fear-based, mind control type world is actually getting pretty damn boring.
Well, I think we are so bored with social consciousness, and we're so bored with being victims and being enslaved through dependency. We've run that program redundantly, and all the manufactured lack and everything else. We are so done with that program, and it's not natural. It totally goes against universal law and natural law. And I've used this example before. If you just take an ear of corn, like one kernel will grow an ear of corn, and count the kernels. There's like 500 kernels on an ear of corn plus. You take that, put take that seed, put it in the ground. Now you have 500 new corn stalks with one or two corn cobs on the thing, with or ears of corn with another 1,000 or 500 seeds. Do the math. That's nature. That's how abundant nature is, and that is the nature of reality. But we have been enslaved through dependency, and with all this manufactured lack, it's been going on for so long that we've just accepted that as normal. And what's really sad is there's areas where you can go and there's mountains. I mean, literally mountains of grain, of corn and wheat and things just sitting there rotting because they're trying to keep the prices up. They don't want to flood the market with all this stuff. And our own government is buying it. And at the same time, there's whole countries starving, in famine and things like that. And that's really sick, I think. That's about as sad as you can get. That shouldn't happen.
Absolutely true. And, there was a time on the planet, and in the modern age, I don't think anyone is being taught this, but there was a time where food, water, and shelter were free.
Yeah.
You didn't have to buy them. So, at this point, we've really gone off the deep end. I mean, we really have, and it's showing. Because now, like what you're saying, it's like since the major world collapse in 2008 that they've totally downplayed, by the way. I mean, that was so huge, and they've downplayed it, and of course they've managed to artificially shoot the market up so that everybody thinks that, everything's fine. You talk about out of balance, out of whack, out of sight. You're right. Collapse is inevitable, and no Band-Aid's going to fix it.
Yeah, and that's what I see. I mean, it sounds cruel in a way, but there is going to be a lot of there's going to have to be some major, urban renewal, and we have to start living differently. We have to get closer to the earth and live in harmony with nature, and start allowing nature's abundance to take care of us, and get out of these old programs. And there's some areas that are probably going to need some major cleanup just because of what's been done to the earth. It's been so poisoned, and there's so much toxins in the land and the water there and everything else. There's going to have to be some major cleanup. But it's that's part of nature. That's what earth has to do to heal herself and renew herself and move on to be the platform for life, for the future. And we need to get with the flow and just flow with that and let her do what she needs to do, and be a part of the cleanup too. The more we clean up, the less she has to do. And and she's going to be very thorough when she, there's an old saying, nature's slow to act, but she's very thorough, when she does. And that's what a lot of this severe weather we're experiencing, this incredible climate change, the unprecedented increase in earthquake and volcanic activity, all of that stuff is this huge birthing and cleanup process that we're undergoing right now.
Which would make so much sense, James, that we should just embrace our lives, our lives and our families and our friends and our brothers and sisters on this planet. We should, if we're going to go through this huge, sort of upheaval, maybe even a polar shift and, all of the rest of it, we should just get down and start having some fun. And we can educate others and have awareness, but, create awareness with others and still have fun. And I think you're right. I think we're in it. I think we've hit that tipping point, and I think that, we're not home free, but we are, and we're starting to really feed the whole our next generation, if you will, of what our evolution. We're starting to feed that consciousness. I want to talk about real briefly, because we've only got a few more minutes. You're going to be speaking at a huge event called Contact in the Desert. And for those of you who don't know what this is, you need to go. You're talking about James is going to be speaking, George Norrie, Stephen Greer, Giorgio Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens, David Wilcock, Graham Hancock, Jim Mars, Michael Tellinger, William Henry, Michael Sala, Jason Martel, David Sarita, Richard Dolan. I mean, the list goes on. Carol Rosen, oh my God, one of my faves. The list goes on. And when they're done with this list on the front page of that website, they say, and many, many, many more. So, oh my gosh, you want to talk about contact in the desert and a party. So, for everyone who's interested, I'm also going to be doing an article on the show that we've just done tonight, and I'll throw this information in for you, James, and then here we'll just drop a link if, I can get my producer to drop that link. You want to save that link, folks, because you're talking. I don't think I've ever seen anything this big. Have you, James?
No, this is going to be big. You know, and that's my stomping grounds. I was raised in Apple Valley, which is very close to Joshua Tree.
Is that right?
Yeah, with the Integratron and with Ralph Ring and Otis Carr and those guys building the UFO. They flew around there that the FBI shut down and all that stuff. That's my old territory when I was a kid.
And now, what are you going to be doing there? Are you going to be doing a workshop or lecture or both?
A lecture and a workshop. Okay. I've got to look at the schedule again, and I'm going to cover everything. You know, from the eighth dimension down, what's happening on the planet, who's who in the multiverse. You know, contact with different beings, and even bring them in for people to experience. You know, those energies, the different types of energies, and you know, I'll be covering a lot of things. I'm going to cover the Archon network and how we did get screwed up and lost, and what we can do to clear that out. So it's going to be very, very controversial, what I have to say, and you know, I might step on a couple toes. I hope not, but you know, sometimes people, you know, need to hear certain things, and we'll see how that unfolds.
Oh, sure. Well, do people ever throw apples and bananas at you?
No. You know, I've been very lucky. I've gotten basically standing ovations every time that I.
There you go.
And because I get out of the way, and it's not so much me speaking; it's usually the higher beings coming in.
Which is a very brave thing for you to do, and I know that feeling. And James, it's a very brave thing to do. So we all thank you for that. And
we've got a Cape Pacha event here happening at the ranch too on the 16th and the 17th.
What's Cape Pacha?
It's a private event, and if people want to find out more about it, it's just a group of healers that are coming here.
Is one of them from Hawaii?
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Tom.
Tom Lesher, and
Tom Lesher's awesome.
Yeah, he's great, and so he's one of the main people. But there's a whole lot of us all be involved in it and everything else. But it's a private event. If you want to find out more, just contact us. Just go through the website at eceti.org or go through Eceti reservations.
Do you know what the dates are on the Kapacha event?
Yeah, it's August 16th, I think 17th and 18th. It's that weekend, and that's going to be an amazing event. And we've had every event that we've had here. We've had amazing UFOs fly over and put on a show. So we did at the last event as well. You know, it's pretty interesting. And this new movie thing, I don't really want to spill the beans on this yet. I'm afraid to say too much. I want to get the trailer out first. But as soon as we get the trailer out, you know, we're going to be looking for people, because this is going to be a synchronistic event. And we already have some people that have already chipped in and helped out, but we're going to be looking for sound people and camera people, and we already have a beautiful director and producer that's going to be working with us, and she's already got a movie out too, Beyond Hope, so she's co-producing that one.
You know what I'd do if I were you, James?
Yeah.
And I'll get with you another time, or off the air. You make a request, like on a poster, like how we make the posters for the show, for what you need, and then a lot of us websites, like Alfred, all of us who have websites, can just advertise that on our website with a link back to you guys for anybody who wants to volunteer.
Yeah, that's exactly the way this is going to go.
Okay, good. Because go ahead.
One of the sad things about it, I've been watching all of these movies, and a lot of them are just infomercials about one person to steer all the energy into one camp. And they're covering just half the information, and they're not covering the whole thing. And what we're going to do is we're just going to show all the way through from birth on contact and what happens, and the pitfalls and the different groups that are trying to interfere. We're going to cover the whole enchilada with an incredible happy ending, you know. So it's definitely going to be something that is going to be a real eye-opener. And it's going to go through the ancient history of Earth and show how we got hijacked and what really happened in the past, and you know, go into other past lives that I've had and other people have had. We don't know exactly how we're working on the screenplay right now, finishing it off. But we've already got part of the trailer done. And so, like you're saying, I want to get the trailer done first, and then we're going to put it out there, like you said, and make a flyer, and then we're going to see how it comes together from there. But I think it's going to be a massive response to this, and it's just going to take off like crazy.
Sounds really good, and these are the types of movies that people want to see. So I don't think you're going to have any problem with it. You know, as the consciousness, you know, unfolds and awakens, you just get more and more interested in getting the information. So I think it's going to be wonderful. We'll help you advertise it, whatever you need. Good evening, everybody. Across the world, it's so nice. I was getting some emails from a lot of you from the UK and Canada. And I had no idea the far reach of this show, how many of you out there are listening. So welcome to the show. Appreciate you tuning in. This is The Truth Tonight. I am your host this evening, Roxy Lopez. We have a real exciting guest that you all just adore, and I do too, and I'm so glad to have him back as well, that he can take the time in his busy schedule. Today is the last show of July 2013, July 30th, so no more shows for this month. We do have some cool stuff coming up for August, as I told you about. Some of the guests that I've really been wanting to get on the show, like Norio Hayakawa, will be on. Of course, we're having astrologer Lynn Wallach back next month, and whistleblower Donald Marshall will be with us on the 9th. He has a lot to talk about. We've got Stephen Bissett coming on the show on the 13th to report citizens' hearings and, of course, UFO disclosure and how that's all going with the Paradigm Research Group. And then we're going to talk about fracking. And we've got 4 experts coming on the show on the 16th to really, again, whistleblowers, to whistleblow the whole fracking industry. And I think that's going to be very interesting. And then, of course, Paul Mack and Max Bliss, those of you who are following the whole chemtrail movement. Paul Mack is from Australia. Max Bliss is living up in France. And they are real big in the front of the movement. And they're making some headway in the parliament. And they're going to give us all the updates on what they have been doing that has been positive and has generated not only major awareness, but for the public, but for the government. So this will be a very fascinating show on the 20th. And, of course, we've got a pilot coming on the 30th by the name of Stephen Knussel. And, of course, aviation expert Mark McCandlish. And we're going to have the chemtrail debate on that show on the 30th. And that's going to be very interesting because the pilot, and we've already done the homework on it, he truly has been a pilot for quite some time, Stephen Knussel, and he does not believe what we think is going on. And he's also running for government. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation. So go ahead and look on the schedule page at thetruththenight.com if you want to check in and see all of the shows coming up in August. There's many more than that, but the month of August is going to be very revealing. And I also find it interesting that all of these people are coming forward in August to talk and whistleblow, being that August, according to Brad Olson and many others, is the timeline event where 2 timelines are going to merge in August. And maybe our guest this evening, James Gilliland, may be able to speak on that as well. James, I'm just going to bring you on the show. You're very well known to my audience, so I don't think there is any introduction necessary other than James Gilliland.
That they've announced, you know, as far as forgetting the debt and some of the other things that have gone all the way up again to the Queen and to the Pope, you know, and things have been signed off. So there's going to be some huge changes, but there's going to be about a 3-year window where the banksters are going to still mess around and try to do what they're going to try to do, as they always do. But you know, they have to go along with this because it's on the highest levels. You know, the huge changes are on the highest level, so it's going to eventually come down to you and me, within the next 3 years. I think it's going to happen much faster than that.
And thanks for sharing that with us, James, because, a lot of controversy right now, as you well know, is the negative timeline and the positive timeline. And I think a lot of us has really gotten the spiritual memo, so to speak, that we really need to focus on that positive timeline, manifesting it. And so this is just more evidence, if you will, and validation of what you've just accomplished in the last year for all of us to know that it is time for change and to make these changes, as you say, coming from the highest, the divine, the highest order on the planet, to make those changes, because even though it was difficult and it was like a war and it was crazy and you had to really fight for your divine right, once they lose, they lose. I mean, once you get past a certain point, you have now accomplished something, and then of course you've got to continue to uphold divine rights. So awesome, and congratulations. I really appreciate that. It's wonderful news.
Yeah, it is coming on the highest order, as you said, seen and unseen, because there are beings. A lot of people don't. I guess I need to clarify this, but the old saying Anunnaki was those who came from heaven to earth. And it's not just one group. That could apply to a lot of different groups, but people refer to one group. And there were some beings that came here that tinkered with humanity. There's been beings coming back and forth and colonizing the earth for 650 million years. So this has been going on for a long time. But there are beings that are coming that would be referred to as the gods. They're not the fallen ones that came here and fell and created all kinds of havoc. But those beings are returning now. And, the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, there's an Orion Council of Light, there's Arcturians, all these higher beings now are pressing hard on the earth, and they're implementing what I call universal law, or principles, necessary for a healthy society and environment, as well as the manifestation, or there's a quickening between action and reaction. And so karma is just, becoming truckma, and it's coming real fast now. And we've been going through huge shifts of energy to help us get through that on the positive timeline. And, one of those came through last Friday. I just got inundated with people saying, what is going on? I'm an emotional wreck. I'm all over the place. I'm fighting with my mate I don't know why this is all coming up. But this huge push of energy came through, and it pushed up everything that's been repressing, the divine feminine, and all the rejection energies and issues and oppression energies and everything all just came up and got processed, it seems like, in just a 2-day period. And it was just, it was like bedlam for a while. And the women were really, stepping in their power and unloading, and the men were going, what the hell do I do now? And didn't figure out what to do with it. And I was telling them, we need to just sit back and let the process happen and listen. Don't try to fix it, support it, allow it to happen, and get behind this balancing movement that's happening on the earth. So that's one that almost everybody I know felt. I don't know anybody that didn't feel that, last
Correct.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that time period around there, people were just really wigging out.
Correct. And we actually mentioned it opening on Friday's show. I definitely went through something that was much longer than 3 days. But when you describe the Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing, you're right. There was a huge shift, and it was. You're exactly right on what to do when that happens, because you can't resist it. You have to just let it go, because it really screws with your head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And men always want to fix it, or they want to defend themselves or whatever else. And you can't, you just have to let it go through. You have to let the process finish and then work on it later,
Yes, agreed. And I don't think that, a lot of us are willing or able or all the rest of it. You know, we just, it hits us, and then it takes a few days to even figure out that this is energetic, that it's not just life on life terms. There's something extra.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a release. And I don't know if you noticed it, but there was an absolute, I could just cry with joy. With joy. There was a release that came somewhere around Sunday night, Monday morning. Something changed. Even my own household and my animals changed overnight. Like something, they relaxed.
Yeah, we raise yaks here, and we have this huge bull. And this bull just came over, and he buried his head in my chest and was saying, "Scratch me," you know. And he's just standing there, just calm, and he just wanted to be, you know, petted.
Gilliland from Eceti Ranch. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
James, fill me in. I'm curious because the last time you were on the show, we had some footage that you had recently done, which was just astounding. I mean, that video has gone viral for you, and it's on our website as well. It was fascinating. I loved that you got such great footage of these quote unquote power ups. So fascinating. And then following that, you had the seminar or the conference. Can you tell us how the conference went? Tell us about some of the people that I know. Laura Eisenhower was there, and I wish that I could have come, and thanks for the invite. I was not able to make it, but there's always time in the future. How was the seminar, and what did you learn? Was there any exciting stuff that happened during that few days?
You know, we had quite a lineup here, and I wish I had the schedule with me because my left brain's gone out to lunch. But yeah, we had Laura Eisenhower, myself. We had Spencer Barkley, and he was talking about sovereignty and working, you know, along those lines. And you know, we had to do a lot of things here at the ranch. We had to patent the land, and we joined Divine Province, which is a really wonderful organization that has actually taken back our rights. You know, now we're divine people all the way to the Pope and to the Queen. So, and he's gotten the seal of Peter. So that's pretty interesting. You can go to divineprovince.org and check out more of that. So we've actually become an embassy here right now. And so we invite people through private invitation. We had to go totally private just to get the powers that be off our back and to continue doing the work, you know, that we're doing. But yeah, we had a pretty good lineup, and I don't know, I'm just like brain farting right now for some reason.
No, don't worry about it. Listen, I you know, while we're on the subject, James, tell us a little bit about when did you patent the land? And I think a lot of people are very interested in that. So could you tell us, you know, you don't have to go down the step by step how it happened, but once you patent the land, then you have more rights. Is that correct?
Yeah, Nate and Spencer did amazing work on that, and he's been helping us out quite a bit here. And we did it quite a while ago. It's about almost a year ago. And what it does is you go back to your original land grant and you accept the deed. And when you do that, you're in first, you know, priority, and then all the other contracts after that really don't apply. So, because you're first in priority, and you just choose not to engage, not to contract with them anymore. And we did a lot of other things too, as well as you know, kind of rescind any contracts, any and all contracts. We don't even have an address right now, so like it's quite interesting. But we've rescinded all contracts, and you know, we've taken back our divine heritage, our divine name, and got out of the all caps, you know, contract program that, you know, the Corporation of the United States, and so we're operating more under a true republic versus, you know, the old program, which is, you know, the United States was hijacked a long time ago, and that's a show in itself. So I don't want to get into that, but
oh no, it totally is. But I just have to ask, James, are you exempt from property taxes now?
We are. We haven't pressed that end of it yet, but we are, and you know, legally everybody is, but you know, you just have to know how to enforce it. But it's quite a trick. But it's not easy. You know, it's not an easy road. I had to go to court 10 times over all this mess, and you know, I got handcuffed and, you know, for offending a judge, and got right back out again really fast. But we dismissed 3 or 4 judges and a couple of prosecuting attorneys, and the whole case was finally dismissed. And then they tried one more time, and it's just been a nightmare doing this. But it's what's sad is that the only reason we did it is because we were totally being trespassed upon, and willfully doing everything they could to shut us down and shut our doors. And we had no choice because they wouldn't cooperate in any way whatsoever. Because we tried to go the normal route, and we paid all of our permits. We did walk through all the steps and everything, and they continued to refuse to give us any permits or any, and wouldn't allow us to do anything here on the ranch. And so finally we just said, well, welcome to the Constitution, because, you do have a right to privacy. You do have a right to practice your spiritual beliefs, and you do have a right to assembly, and freedom of speech and all those things. Those are basic rights, and everything that they were doing was totally contrary to that, which goes against all of their oaths, and their mandate, So anyway, we kind of brought all this to their attention, but I wouldn't go the constitutional way. You want to totally separate completely. That's another long story. You want to become a divine being. So we're more like an embassy now, other than, we're, put it this way, we're not a person, we're not a slave under the all caps anymore, and we're not subject to, their jurisdiction.
Which is awesome. That brings up a lot, and that would be a show in itself. And maybe sometime we will walk down that road and do a show on that, because you've accomplished it. And then you can speak, you're not a straw man anymore is what it is.
Yeah, and I'll bring the people on the show that can really address this. Nate and Spencer, who've helped me out with this, they would come on the show too, and they've got all the details and are very eloquent in expressing this on how it's all done. And then another person, James McBride with divineprovince.org. I don't know if you've heard of him. But,
no.
I would really check into him and get him on the show, because he's got some huge breakthroughs